Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca Jackson and I'm here with fellow Microsoft MVPs Ben Elias and Simon Terry, and we're wanting to have a bit of a chat about the recently announced Microsoft Loop. So Microsoft Ignite was just this last week, so super recent, and with all of our kind of backgrounds in intranet and internal comms, Loop really caught our attention. Loop threw us for a loop. Let's see if we can get some good puns in here. I don't know, but definitely for me, I'm just going to jump in and kick it off rather than throwing it over and say, for me, what stood out most of all is that Loop is essentially a wiki, if you want to simplify it, and I do. And it all looks really, really shiny, but when we're not seeing anything beyond the shine right now. So what is its purpose? What is it giving us? And for that, I might throw over to Ben for your thoughts on Loop.
Well, I think we started off from a place a very long time ago where you could open a document. If you had the document open, no one else could open the document, and they couldn't edit it, you could only edit it. And then we had check-in and check-out and SharePoint and other things to kind of control that. And now we've moved into the world of anyone can edit anything at any time, I guess, as long as you have the permission. And this is that sort of next level of putting that interactivity into document creation, I guess, or content creation in the work environment. So I guess that's the problem it's trying to solve. And my question is, does it really solve that problem? So, you've fixed the problem of being able to open the same thing at the same time, but now you've almost gone to the other end of the scale. And to me, at least, looking through some of the I appreciate they've only got 10 seconds or so to show you the animation of what you can do in that time, and it has to showcase the entire product. But it looks really busy for my liking, and I'd kind of be a bit concerned if I saw that level of fluidity in the document I was working on with the people I was working with, I suppose.
Fluidity being built on the Fluid framework, which I think a lot of people are really excited about, because it seems that we're seeing some fruition from all the effort that's gone into that. But keyword in there for me was permissions. And so, Simon, what does permissions make us think of?
Well, it makes me think of, context and really how we understand what we're being asked to do in a particular piece of work. And I think, I actually hold out that excitement for the potential of this, because I think it's also going to evolve. But I think, we probably understand the context, and you've talked about wikis of the workspaces and the pages version of Loop. But the real roller coaster, to throw one in there, is going to be out in that components part of Loop, because the idea of having elements of a document sitting in many different contexts and being worked on in many different contexts does raise the fact that there might be changes that don't share a context with the other people who are trying to use that information. It'd be really fascinating as this evolves to see how that kind of challenge of people tackling things in different contexts comes together, because, organizations like Wikipedia and others that have gone into that have really strong governance frameworks over how you manage that. And I think governance is a theme we as adoption and collaboration consultants speak about a lot, but it's probably under practiced in many organizations, whether it's governance of things like Microsoft Teams or it's governance of how a tool like Loop gets rolled out. What do you think, Rebecca?
Absolutely. I think the governance and adoption piece is something that we've been working on for a long time, and certainly it's the first things that we start asking questions about. And I'd hope that a lot of those questions get answered quite quickly as we move closer to when Loop is released as a product. But what it also really made me think of was, and this is something I think that you brought up in your blog post on Ignite more generally, is what about all the other stuff that's not working well right now? So it's interesting to see, a new shiny thing come to the market, but it's introducing more problems while there are other arguably more pressing problems to be solved in the governance and adoption space with Teams, with SharePoint, and Loop is, it's an intranet extension, right? So it's adding more complexity to something that organizations are already struggling to manage well.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges we've all grappled with as the diversity of the Microsoft collaboration stack has come to market is helping people understand how ordinary patterns of work get done across the many choices that the stack offers. Because at the end of the day, most people kind of understand how to do a document, they understand a phone call, they understand a meeting. You start to get out into the realm of, synchronous document collaboration, to borrow Ben's example, and many people are uncomfortable. They're not familiar with that, and as you say, I think there's a fair few people with long lists of things sitting in user voice that they'd love to see rolled out in Teams or in the other products in the stack, who might kind of question, is Loop going to address those issues? How am I going to use this? What's the pattern of collaboration it plays to? And is this another distraction in the investment roadmap? Hopefully not. Hopefully it solves problems, but we don't know yet. 10 seconds is too little for us to tell. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, Ben, what about that? Like Simon mentioned synchronous, but which is, I think people kind of all in there at the same time. But what about asynchronous? Like synchronous and asynchronous collaboration. Do most people even get what that is, let alone what collaboration is, and doing it well with a tool like this?
I think the one thing that actually strikes me is the concept of governance, and actually this can be really tangible for people. So we typically think of governance as like a policy decision with the IT people, and they're the ones who make governance choices and all the rest of it. But if you were to have a conversation about some piece of content, let's just say it's a graph or sales results or something else like that, which sort of has some element of truth to it, some element of history to it, it shouldn't move around too much. If you want to have a conversation with someone about that data, that content, it can't move. So if you want to have a conversation with your sales results, and then you have a conversation with someone and they've seen the same sales results but have a completely, saw it at a different time and they look completely different, you have a really awkward conversation because you don't have the same shared understanding of what you were both looking at, short of having maybe printed it out in front of you to kind of show the other person. But that's where the governance problem kind of rubber hits the road, because that's a governance problem, and that's two people having a conversation in a corridor about some sales results, not some sort of very abstract data privacy conversation or something like that, or archiving conversation or e-discovery or whatever you want to do for your governance. So it really can be tangible in front of people that the governance needs to be there so that they can have a conversation with their colleague about the sales results, and rather than some sort of abstract theoretical risk that they're trying to avoid or something like that. But the asynchronous and synchronous collaboration, I don't know how many times I've tried to edit a document at the same time as someone else in practice. I could probably count those on a hand. But yeah, that maybe that's me being a dinosaur of the ways of working realm.
I think it's interesting, like a lot of the demos you see of stuff like this is like multiple people all in there at the same time, like what you see with a mirror or a mural board. You get like everybody swarming over it, which is not the common use case, I think.
Yeah, and the examples they give, again, they sort of rearrange content around the page, and there's a lot of information density in what they're providing, and as humans we actually have some sort of constraint. Obviously we're trying to map out what that is exactly and whether we can find the boundary as fast as we can, but there's some parts of the world where you just don't see this sort of very off the cuff. People write stuff down, they edit it, they then send it out for review, that gets edited, comes back. Like people don't just have something and then it's perfect first go and it kind of gets published out to the rest of the world. And that's sort of a confidence thing that we have to deal with now. And this only kind of turning these sort of features on only makes that worse a bit.
So what would you, Ben or Simon, at this point in time, if you were speaking to a client or working within an organisation and they're like, oh, did you see this cool thing, Loop? What do you reckon? What would your advice be?
I'm happy to go first. I think tread carefully, understand the use cases and the patterns that you think it's going to add value, not to your tech stack, but to your actual users, and spend some time on investing with adoption so that users really understand what this is and how it can be leveraged.
I'd say to consider the diversity of the people you work with and the teams that you work with. So if you're looking at this thing, it doesn't cost you much. It's a choice to turn it on. Maybe it's a choice to turn it off. There'll be someone in your organisation who might want to use it. And at the end of the day, you're actually denying them the ability to be creative and all that sort of stuff. In the team of 3 that they're in, and the hundreds of people who won't ever use it and it won't kind of bother them. So as long as it's not distracting you from what you actually want to do, which does come to the adoption, and actually if you want to try and change the way people work, that's another kind of distraction from that objective. But actually, I'm sort of erring on the side of it's not such a bad thing to let people play with for the time being, as long as it doesn't cause too much harm.
Yeah, I think I know for sure at least 2 people who are going to be super excited about this. Probably even more, because in my career I've had a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I need a wiki. And whenever somebody asks me for such a thing or similar, my question is, what problem are you trying to solve and how are you solving it now? And I think that's a really good place to start, is to just pull back from the shiny thing. And experimentation is great, but it should be purposeful. And I definitely don't want to stifle creativity. But what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And how are we solving that problem now? And how do we see this new piece of technology value adding to it, would be my add to what you've both said. Anybody got any other final thoughts they want to throw in? Or loop puns? I think Simon's winning with the roller coaster one.
No,
I've thrown you for a loop.
You have thrown us for a loop. Well, I'll just
so
do a
sorry.
loop the loop there, and away we go.
Nice. Thank you both so much. Always good having these conversations. Definitely interested to hear what other people have to say about Loop. If you haven't checked out the little promo video from Ignite, I'll make sure that it's associated with this video in some way so that you can have a look at it. And yeah, we would love to know what you think, and we'll certainly be watching closely to see how this evolves and what things look like when it's released. So thank you very much, Ben and Simon.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.